This limited Kintsugi Heroes podcast series was made possible with grant funding from the Bupa Foundation Australia through their Community Grants program. If you'd like to find out more about Kintsugi Heroes, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au. Welcome to our Kintsugi Heroes special series, Australian Carers, where we shine a light on the stories of the important Australians who provide voluntary care for someone in need. In this episode, Vinay Nair had a chat with Monica Benney, a dedicated carer with over 35 years of experience who has balanced her responsibilities with her professional roles in senior management and social work, offering invaluable insights and heartfelt advice for fellow carers. Now, let's get to the conversation.
Welcome, Monica.
So I suppose a little bit about me and my, as I would say, my journey. So I started off my journey as a carer when I was 18. So I was a young carer, and that was through my own choice. So newly married, newly with a child, and officially became a carer when I was 18. Looked after my brother on and off, who has a profound intellectual disability, from when I was about 16, 17 at different times, but full time from when I was 18.
And you said you were married at 18 too.
Yeah, married. So still married to the same man to this day. So whether that's by sheer luck, I always say you get less for murder, but you wouldn't have it any other way. So I started off as I said, as a carer officially at 18, didn't know what services were available, thought I could do it all myself. You know, as any cocky 18-year-old would think. And, you know, having a new baby. So I had a son and, you know, didn't realise that there was support available. So did that for a few years on my own and raised the kids, and husband was working, and then it was, you know, so we did that for a number of years. We moved to all different places for work for my husband because he drove trucks and had to live in that area, and had a second child with looking after my brother. And that was the first time I sought out services, was when I was pregnant with our daughter. I was 21 when she was born, so that would have been about 3 years after we started caring for my brother, and we needed someone to look after him whilst I was in hospital having the second child. And that's when I found out there was respite. So we went to respite, and then that started that journey of learning about services, and we still only had very minimal services. Then we come to live in the location, that community that we're in now, and we started to get more services, which was great. And, you know, I saw him grow metaphorically, not physically, because he was an adult when he came to live with us, grow in what he was able to do, because his previous life was very traumatic and home life, but you wouldn't think that now. He's, 35 years on. He lives a very good life and still lives with us. So he's come along that journey. I returned to work in a part-time capacity, started off volunteering, and wanted to give back to the community, and still do to this day, want to give back. So when my son was 14, his mental health was emerging, and that was, you know, quite challenging as a family, because we had my brother, and he was receiving a variety of services that increased. And I think back when my son was 14, 15, I think we were getting about 3 hours of support a week, which was nothing in comparison to his needs. And he has a profound intellectual disability. So functions anywhere between a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old, depending on what it is. So he can't prepare his own food, all it has to be done for him, but he can eat it himself. So therefore he functions at a higher level for some of those things. Then whilst my children were young, I returned to study myself. So not only was I volunteering at the local community health centre, just a couple of hours a week, as I said, to give back to the community, I then studied off campus back then, which now that you could do it online, whereas back then it was correspondence as such. And I did my social work degree. The best thing that I could have ever done was to do that. And I always say that my social work degree was a journey of self-discovery. It was stuff I already knew because I was already dealing with it on a day-to-day basis with my brother. But seeing how all that fitted in was, it was, as I said, journey of self-discovery. And when I finished my social work degree in 2004, I returned to work full-time because we had to support our family. We were building a home. So I returned to work full-time and did a variety of different roles. But one of the roles that I did was around planning for people's future. So the precursor, for a better word, to what is the NDIS today. So Victoria had a scheme called Support and Choice. It was, as I said, rolled out in about 2004. That became an individualised funding program, and then the NDIS rolled out. So very much the same. So it was about exploring people's goals and so I thought really fit well with who I was as a person and how I looked at my brother's needs. Obviously, my son's mental health emerged during that time, and I was going, I can't do work and then come home and deal with it because I was working in a multitude of spaces. So I started to look at other ways of working. So after a few years of doing, frontline social work, managing respite houses, etc., I then moved into quality and risk, which is what I did until I stopped working in December of last year. So making sure that services were good for everybody. When I was doing frontline work, I was looking at how I was making a difference in individuals' lives on a daily basis in what I could do. So I never ever thought that I could change the world, but I could assist people to be the best that they could be. So I worked from that premise. When, as I said, my son's mental health emerged, I thought I can't continue to do this. And I had my brother, then my son, and I'm thinking I can't continue to do that in the same way. I can't be full on at work, working individually, and then being in that home environment and doing the same thing. So I moved more into management, and as I said, into that quality space. And that was about making a difference in more people's lives in a different way. So still went out and worked with clients when I had to, but predominantly in the back end and making sure that the workers that were going and working with clients were actually making a difference in their lives rather than controlling it. Because they used to use an example, not all service is good service. So I say to people when I would be working in the community sector, they'd say, "Oh, Monica, they've got a worker. What does it matter?" And I'd give the example of, all right, so I'm going to come and knock on your door, and this is about drawing on that experience because my brother has a lot of personal care as part of what support he gets. And I'd say, I'm going to knock on your door. I may or I may not show you identification. You're going to just take on face value that I'm from the organisation that said that they were sending someone. You don't actually know because you've never met me. Then I'm going to come into your home. You don't know me from Adam. I'm going to come in and then I'm going to take you to your bathroom. I'm going to strip you naked and then I'm going to shower you. And then I'm going to say, see you later. Have a nice day. Now, is that good quality service or have I just invaded every part of your world? And they go, oh, I didn't look at it like that. I says, well, that's how I see it. And I don't want anybody to feel that vulnerable. So that was the premise of the quality improvements that I made in the organisation that I was working for. That was the lens that we had, that it wasn't any service is good service. Good service had to be good service. So I did that and worked in that organisation for a while, worked there for 12 and a half years, actually. So they were quite good to me. My husband then, who is the third person I look after, he had a high-speed motor vehicle accident now 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago. I thought at the time What's the difference? What's 2? What's 3? What does it really matter? I can tell you the jump from 2 to 3 is enormous. The jump from 1 to 2, not so hard because I was already looking after my son. As I said, he was a teenager. The jump to looking after somebody that had lots of hospital visits and lots of trauma that goes with a motor vehicle accident was very different. But did I maintain my job? Did I maintain my positive outlook on life? Absolutely. I am a firm believer that you're only given something in life that you can actually deal with. Sometimes you might go, why me? And that's okay. You can have those times. We all have those times. But it's about what you can take from that. And I've been looking after that person now for 10 years. So in total, 35 years of caring, but 10 years in caring for 3 people with completely different needs. When I support them, it's completely different. One needs you to work alongside of them. The other needs you to role model, and the other just needs you to bark orders at them. So so they all have different needs. At the end of the day, I'm exhausted. But do I regret that decision? Never. Not once. Not once. I think it's made me the person that I am. I was able to work in very senior management roles probably for the last 10 years. I've only just stopped working in December of last year, but I haven't really stopped working. I've started my own business to make that difference, to continue to make that difference, but to balance it and to select the clients that, have had it a bit hard. So the clients that I work with at the moment, some of them have done it pretty tough and haven't known what a good life looks like. So that's my mission, is to help them have a good life, not make it good for them to do it, because anything is achievable.
So, Monica, you've talked about a number of different scenarios and experiences that you've had. I want to just pick on one thing to start off with, about the matter of respite, right? You talked about how you found some respite for your brother, but also can you speak to the listeners about respite for the carer as well? Because I think a lot of people feel like it's the person who they're caring for that they need respite. But how does it differ to respite for the carer?
Yeah, it works both ways. So when my brother goes, and he's the only one out of the 3 that I care for that goes to respite, but he also has probably the most physical needs. So respite gives us all an opportunity. So he goes off to the farm and has a lovely time with all the farm animals and has an absolute amazing experience. Whereas for me, it gives me time just to be me without having to worry about, well, is the support worker turning up? Has he had his shower? Has he made his bed? Has he been fed? It takes away that thinking, I suppose, even if it is just for a couple of days. And even that's accommodation respite. But when he's got support workers, and when he's got good support workers, and there is a difference between good support workers and just support workers, is that, again, gives me time to have that break, to do things for me. Because if I don't look after me, and sometimes you forget that as a carer, and I'll be the first one to say I'm not always great at looking after me, but it's about finding
Mm,
those moments that you can look after you.
mm,
So respite can be very formal in that you've got a support worker or away at a respite. So I consider the time that he is away at respite at the farm to be really, really valuable. It allows me to do, even though I care for my husband as one of the people I care for, but it allows me to go out for a date night as such. Because otherwise, if I go out anywhere at any other time, I've got to take them all with me. Whereas if I don't have my brother, then I can leave my son at home and
mhm,
say, right, go and have something out of the freezer. Dad and I are
mm.
going out. Can't really do that unless he's in respite.
So it's giving you time to kind of recharge and re-energize and do something that you might enjoy.
Yeah, but I also think respite is about building. There's formal respite, which is what I've just talked about, but I also every day make time for self-care or respite, if you want to put it in another way. Every morning I wake up like I'm the chronic insomniac, but I will wake up and that's when I will listen to a podcast. That's when I will read a book, when I will just have some alone time I have that every single day. I try to have at least half an hour. It'll be when I make a cup of tea. That might be at 4 o'clock in the morning, but you know what? That's okay. Make a cup of tea and everybody in the house is asleep. So it's me time. If I have to have me time during the day, I will go and have a
Mm-hmm.
shower because they won't annoy me while I'm in the shower. So it's the little things that I think are essential. And if I can say anything to the listeners and watchers is make time for you. If you don't, you will just burn out. And that can be something as simple as, a guilty pleasure of scrolling through Instagram and watching funny cat and dog videos and having a good old giggle to yourself. Even just standing in a shower and just wash
Yeah.
whatever it is away. Take those little moments and value them. The formal respite's great, and I would not be without it, but it's the little things every day. And some people would call that self-care, whereas I see that as a little tiny bit of respite.
Mm-hmm. A little tiny bit of, a space for yourself, creating a bit of boundary. Something else that I wanted to touch on, you talked about how, you know, you decided to look after your brother at a very young age when you were starting a family of your own, and I'm guessing at that point your understanding of what caring was is very different to what it is like now. What would you say to Monica of, when she was 17 years old about caring now?
With hindsight, and we're always like hindsight will always come and bite you in the backside. I would say you can't do it all on your own. You have to have a whole village to help you. When I was, young, I thought I could do anything and be everything. And as a carer, I was 18. I thought I was invincible. I can do anything. And it wasn't until I started to get some support that I realized just how valuable that is. So, yes, I dealt with but I'm supposed to be able to do this myself. And if it was a message I would give to the 18-year-old Monica with all the wisdom that I have today is embrace that support and utilize it, but also stay on top of it and
Mm.
make sure that it's good support and actually helps you rather than putting your energies to making it look right.
Making it look right. Can you tell us more about what you're thinking there?
Yeah, so obviously when I first started getting supports, I'd go, all right, it's got to all be about my brother because obviously he was the first one I was getting support for. It's got to be about what he absolutely needs. I don't want to shave him, for example, and I was shaving him, and even to this day, if I say to him, "Oh, Sissy will shave you," no, because I would be the classic cut him with a razor because shaving yourself versus shaving someone else is a very different skill set. So he would have all these cuts all over his face, and when he said no more and he wanted to grow a beard, I thought, thank goodness for that because that meant I didn't have to shave him anymore. But I got someone to come in and support us with that, because it's not a skill set that I had. And yeah, that was very different. That was the first time we had people in our home. So the first time I had respite, as I was saying, was when I was pregnant and I needed to have someone look after him whilst I was in hospital having a baby. And from that, we then started to have supports in the home. And the first support was had someone coming in and shaving him. I still did the all the other personal care, but just not having to cut him as much as that would break my heart. I didn't know how to do it. To someone who does it regularly, they didn't cut him, and then he just decided he didn't want it. So he's got a full beard now, and would not have it any other way. And I think he's got his full beard because my husband went through, and he's always looked up to my husband. He went through a period where he had a beard, so my brother wanted a beard as well. So I went, fine. And I just get it trimmed now. I don't have to worry about it.
Does your son have a beard too?
No, clean shave. I actually don't like beards, personally. So every time my husband, and that's the first sign that their mental health's not so great, is that their personal care will drop. So I'll say, you haven't had a shave for a little while. Is everything okay? Because neither one of them particularly wants a beard either. But my brother does. He loves his beard and wouldn't have it any other way.
Now, you talked about mental health, and I know that a lot of carers struggle with their own mental health. Has there been a time when you had an experience like that? Because you've been caring for a number of years.
Yeah, so I think that I think that, as I said, going and studying and doing my social work degree, one of the things is, and I said earlier, that it was a journey of self-discovery. It taught me to reflect, and it taught me lots of things. So I can't be giving advice to clients if I can't practice it myself. And I know that a lot of us are very good for not necessarily practicing what we preach. But I took it on, as a carer, you do have to sometimes, put yourself first, and otherwise your mental health suffers. If you're not in a good space, and I'm not saying that I'm always in a good space. I do have days where I'm down. A couple of years ago, I had a period where I was critically ill and I was in hospital, had made all these arrangements in order to die, literally. And I would say that's probably the toughest time that I've ever had as a carer. I reached out to support services at the time. They says, "Yeah, we'll put you on a waiting list." I says, "I'm dying now, not in the future. Now, I need supports now." And my family fell apart. For a better word, I had support workers at home that doing the right thing and were neglecting my brother. My husband was in the hospital with me. So it was during COVID when you weren't allowed to have visitors unless you were at end of life. Thankfully, I'm still here. So I'm sure my family are very grateful for that. But I would say
Hmm.
that's where my mental health was probably the weakest. It's funny because my doctors and the nurses in the hospital said to me that, you know, I, I was an inspiration to them because I kept setting goals. So, for example, I couldn't walk from more than about a meter because I was that ill. And I says, that's okay. Every half an hour, I had to blow on these. I think I blow on these balls to get them up because I couldn't breathe. So on the half an hour, I would do that. And on the hour, I would get up and I would walk, even if that was 2 steps. And then I would fall down and I couldn't do anything for the next half an hour. But I did that because I thought, if I don't set those goals for me, and I wrote them up to keep myself accountable. And that's my training. I knew that if I didn't set those goals, I wouldn't, but that doesn't mean I didn't have tears. And, I remember the nurses, doing an invasive procedure and I just cried and cried. I says, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've got family at home I need to support. They're all crumbling. There's no one there to do that. Yeah, so that was probably the time that I needed the support. But again, it was setting those tiny little goals. And, if I didn't achieve them, because I would, I remember the nurses helping me to have a shower. And for 2 hours after I'd had the shower, I couldn't move because the shower was just that exhausting. But I didn't beat myself up over it. I thought, no, practice what you preach, get back up on that horse and do what we need to do. So, yes, mental health can be a huge impact for a carer, but it's reaching out to your tribe. It is really about utilizing those supports. Even, have a good cry. It's okay. It's okay. And I can say, 2 years on, it took me probably 12 to 18 months to get my family back on track because, as I said, they fell apart. But are they back on track? Absolutely. Do I still have rough days? Absolutely. Has it given me a different perspective in life? Absolutely.
So something else I wanted to ask you, Monica, is about, you've done that social work degree, and I don't know how you did it, but you did it, and there are I guess there's lots of carers out there, and a lot of carers, like don't necessarily um, think twice about taking on that caring role because they're so giving, and they love to look after others.
And I didn't think twice about it. No, I'm 18.
And I mean, at 18, to think about someone else other than yourself, I don't know if it's, if it happens anymore, but I'm glad you took on that responsibility, and your life is richer as a result of it. I can hear that in what you're saying. For those, because a lot of carers, I feel like, they're often kind of running out of time to do things. They struggle to take time out for themselves. You've gone and done study, and as a result, you've been on this journey of self-discovery. What would you tell carers out there, who haven't had an opportunity to counseling or social work or psychology, and have this opportunity to discover who they are, and what keeps them going? What message do you have for them?
So I would be telling them they need to reach out to carer support services, because that's how my social work degree came about, is that I was part of some of those carer support groups, and because of my thirst and drive made me study. You got to remember that I didn't study until like I took my brother on in, let me think, 1990, I took him on. 1989, I took him on. I didn't study until 2000. So there was a long time between. And I chose social work because it fitted with, wanting to make a difference. So I studied accounting when I first came out of school. And I thought, no, this is not where I see myself. And it was those experiences as a carer that I then used, and utilizing that lived experience, and social work was the closest that utilized it. That's why I call it a journey of self-discovery, because for a lot of students, that's really hard work. Whereas for me, I was in the service system. I understood the service system. I didn't have rose-colored glasses. It was just a really good fit. But I've gone back to doing support groups. Like, I'm doing a writing group at the moment. I go to the monthly carers morning tea. Yeah, I still do those things
Mm-hmm.
because it's about connectedness. Yes, I've made a profession out of it, but I also sit in the space that I need that same support.
Mm-hmm. And and sounds like you're okay to accept that, because
Yeah,
I don't think you're stepping away from the fact that you can also be just as vulnerable, and you're quite
absolutely.
there's a sense of humility in what you're saying as well,
Yeah,
which.
and when I'm in those carer support groups, I don't go saying, "Hey, I'm a social worker." I'm a carer like anybody else. Most of people in the support group that I go to would have absolutely no idea that I have an allied health background, because it's not relevant.
That's right. Um, and so there's people out there, they're finding connection through care support groups. They're asking for help through other organizations. And they're probably seeking counseling as well to look after themselves at different times. Is there still a stigma in being a carer or being involved in having a
I,
caring
I,
role?
I don't know whether there's a stigma now. I think that there's still today, the NDIS and the way that the system has moved has made things better, but it's not holistic. It's like the amount of times I get told, you know, this is about your brother, or this is about your husband. I go, yeah, but what about me in all of this?
Mm-hmm.
I get forgotten. I'm not a machine. Yes, I can take into account their disabilities, but is it okay for them to be, violent? No, it's not okay. And I'm very clear about that. Like, I remember as a psychiatrist that we went to, Aaron was having lots of anger outbursts. And they says, oh, you just have to learn to live with it. I says, no, I don't. No one has to learn to live with that. You need to treat and find out why that's there. If this is outside what was his normal behaviour, let's find out what that's about. We changed psychiatrist and went to someone who specialised in PTSD, and it was the best thing we ever did. So it's about not just accepting, when the medical professionals, because I think they're all knowing and know everything, I'll be the first to challenge them and say, excuse me, but I'm the one that's doing this 24 hours a day. Don't tell me I just have to accept it.
So there's probably what you're saying is there's probably a lack of a voice for carers more than anything else.
It's not that there's no recognition, because there is. So absolutely, if I say to them, yep, I'm that person's carer, they are absolutely respectful. So when I've had to take my brother to hospital, for example, for various different things, there's been no question. I have been attended to, in that space, but do I have a voice? Not necessarily. And I'm a really strong advocate. Like, there's times when I've taken our assistance dog into my husband when he's gone through ED for a medical condition, because he's accident prone. And I mean that in he's very handy. So he likes to fix things. Then he'll injure himself and off to hospital we have to go broke his finger on a gardening, a couple of years ago. When I then have to advocate for him to have his assistance dog, because we don't send the dog in the ambulance with him, or when he presents to ED, we may not necessarily, because there's going to be lots of people moving around and, they need to attend to him. So I'll bring the dog in later and I'll get told, no, there's no dogs allowed. I says, she's an assistance dog. She's got her coat on. Aaron needs her. Oh, but he hasn't asked for her. And I says, have you asked him? Does he need anything? And they'll say, oh, he hasn't asked. I says, well, go and ask him. Oh, no, we don't want dogs on, we can't have dogs on the ward. I says, she's an assistance dog. I says, and the last time we had that sort of a run-in was actually at the Royal Melbourne, and Aaron had fallen off a great height, middle-aged men and Christmas fairy lights. We won't go any further in that conversation other than he fell, and off he went to the Royal Melbourne, and I was at ED, and he'd come in via ambulance. The ambulance officer, paramedic, said to me, can you follow in behind us? And we won't take the dog, because if we have to do anything with Aaron, she may get in the way. Absolutely, I'll follow behind. So I get in, and the nursing unit comes out and she says, no, can't have the dog. And I says, if Aaron was blind, would you say that it wasn't okay for him to have the dog if she was a guide dog? No, that's different. No, it's not. Legally, they are the same. And she says, well, we don't have dogs on the ward. And I tried to be very respectful. And I got to the point, and I suppose it's for Aaron's benefit that, I am that strong-natured. And I says, you can either let the dog in or we'll end up with human rights, your choice. I've already shown you the Disability Discrimination Act and that she's an assistance dog. I've shown you that she is an assistance dog. You're refusing her entry. You cannot do that. I'll go to human rights. You don't need to threaten us. I says, it's your choice. They let the dog in. But I still have that to deal with in order for Aaron to be able to have his dog.
Yeah. And I think, to be able to quote the Disability Discrimination Act, to be able to quote,
That's
that
my
you go to
work
human rights.
background. Yeah. Most people would just go, and leave.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that because I've been a carer for so long, I go, no, he has rights, just like I have rights.
So what would be your message for, to empower carers out there who feel like they don't have a voice and they feel like, they're struggling?
Find an ally.
So through Carer Gateway or through
Carer
Care
Gateway,
Support.
Carer Support, it's Carers Vic. Find an ally. If you've got support coordination in your NDIS, so if they've got any sort of NDIS package, lean on your support coordinator. Get them to help you. Get someone to be in your corner, to have your back. And in my own business, that's exactly what I do. And I suppose that's our point of difference, is that I have my clients' back, and I have no qualms about calling out that sort of behaviour, because I think that is my job to do that. And Yeah, and I would encourage any carer, don't necessarily go someone because they will beat you down. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because if you're making their life hard, then it isn't about, it's about just exerting your rights and saying, the person has a disability and has rights. I'm a carer and I have rights too. Please respect that.
Yeah, carers have rights as well. Something that's also unique about your caring situation is that you and your husband started caring for your brother. Not only at a very young age, but as a family. So you're still a family unit. You've got your son, you've got your daughter, and a grandchild coming into that family unit. You know, and usually when I speak to carers, there's one carer caring for a family member. In this case, you caring for your brother, your husband being involved in partly the care, I'm guessing,
So no, Aaron's never been Leslie's carer. So I'm
right?
very clear about that. So Aaron
But they live under the same roof.
they live under the same roof.
Yep.
If Leslie was to require a shower, for example, Aaron won't do it. Will not do it. He does not see that as his role. If Leslie had to go to an appointment, he would do it like any other family member would. So no different than if his mum needed to go on an appointment and someone needed to step in, he would do that. But if I said, Aaron, I need you to give Leslie a shower, not on your line. And when I have had to get him to support us, he'll go, can I subcontract that out? His words. He's not Leslie's carer.
So is that a discussion that you've had before? Because that's an interesting arrangement that you have there, which obviously which is clear boundaries, which is great because it helps keep your family unit working, functioning effectively.
That's right. So he's always been our children's father. He's always been Leslie's brother-in-law, never Leslie's carer.
Okay, okay. So for lack of a better comparison, I'm thinking of when a family has a foster child in their home.
Yep. So I'm
Right.
working with a family that's got 3 foster children at the moment.
Right, right. And that's a different situation, isn't it? Because the foster child has two parents. But in this case, your brother, you have a different relationship with your brother, and your husband has a different relationship with your brother. So because I was even thinking about, a male carer, probably responds to situations very differently to a female carer. Not that one is, better than the other, but the responses are quite different. So is that an arrangement that you discussed previously with your
No,
husband?
just the way it evolved. So I suppose I always thought that when I took on my brother, it was, even though he supported that decision, it was my job. He was my brother. So I needed to support him in whatever that looked like. That doesn't mean, as I said, that my husband didn't do all the things that any normal brother-in-law would do
Mm-hmm.
for their brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain things that he just wasn't in his wheelhouse, as we would say, and showering and providing Leslie personal care was just not something that he would do. I also didn't directly ask him in those early years.
Right.
So I can't say that he would never have done it. But if I asked him today to shower Leslie, no. Whereas my son would. He will go and shower Leslie. He will do all of those things. He will clean Leslie up if he's incontinent because he's grown up with it.
Right.
But he has a different view. So even though I look after our son and my daughter, they will go and do what needs to be done for Les. Whereas Aaron still has those boundaries.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Now, Monica, where do you see your caring role moving to in future years as you grow and as you.
As I get older, I see us, so part of the reason that, that I stopped working was because it was just too hard. But it's now about reimagining that as a couple of retirees and enjoying a bit of life and doing the things that, revisiting some of those, going to being grey nomads, not as like completely grey nomads because our son is with us, but exploring our own backyard enjoying every day for what it is, there will probably come a day when I can't sustain it, and I will cross that bridge when it comes to it. So still in denial about what that looks like, but I'm only in my 50s. So, and I got through the, critical life event and got through that, fumbled my way through. So I think I would fumble my way through until I went, I can't do this. So if I felt that any of their care was compromised, I'd say, I can't do this. But that's about having done it for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being okay to say, I can't do this.
Being
And
okay to say
that's
that.
tough. And not many carers, until they've done it for a while, they're not going to go, I actually can't do this. And that doesn't make them a failure. It just means that, you've come to your limit. And that's okay. And respecting that decision. And that's where carers counselling really helps. So in order for me to stop working at the end of last year, I actually went through carer counselling to see what does that look like? What does that mean? And I know all the answers. So they say, having the professional background but I let myself be vulnerable and go, well, what does this actually mean? And now I say, I don't know how I had the time to work before because I'm so busy doing everything else.
And that's, it's great to hear that, you took the time to reflect on what that future might look like. And, you make a great point there in terms of, carers feeling like a failure if they can't do something that they used to do previously, right? Our situation changes, our circumstances changes. We need to understand that, carers are human as well. They have needs, they have requirements, and, and there's no harm in, not that there's no harm, there's no requirement that carers need to put up this front of being a strong person.
I always say, and I reflect, if this was somebody else, what advice would I give them? And then take your own advice.
Yeah. That's a really difficult pill to swallow, taking on advice. I often hear myself, giving advice to people and go, that's really good. I should follow that myself.
But it's giving yourself permission to be, as I said, for me, admitting that I couldn't continue to work in the roles that I was working in was huge. Like one of my biggest goals was I had to make sure that my family was supported and didn't want anything, and that could live the life that they deserve and all that sort of stuff. And I kept going, I need to have this amount of money in the bank. And then I need to have, when I'd achieved that, I need to have this amount of money in the bank. And then I need this. And so I kept changing where those goalposts were. And then Aaron had a hospital admission and I was pulled from pillar to post between home and work and the hospital. And I'm just going, I can't keep this up. And I took a sick day from work and just spent time with the boys, as I call them. I call them my boys. And I went, why don't I bust my chops? And I went in the following Monday and I resigned from my job. But I'd had that carers counselling. I had had a couple of sessions. And then when I had that realisation that, yes, I actually have to do this. It's not just I should do this. And And I took my own advice and that I had done with a carer counsellor. And I had one more session after that, after I resigned. And I don't regret resigning.
It wasn't, it wasn't impulsive.
No.
No, it was
very
calculated.
considered. Yeah, very considered. And putting myself into that vulnerable position of talking to a counsellor, even in my head and talking to the counsellor, I'm going, I know what the answers are. I should know all this. I'm a social worker. I know. But having to keep pushing that down and saying, actually, you're a person first and a carer, and what are your values? Always coming back to my values. And I always say that my family are what I do everything for. So resigning and having a job like I had, was that doing what my family needed? No. My family needed me at home, and that's exactly what I do. And they tease me even now, like it's been 6 months, not quite, 5.5 months. And I said, I thought you said you were stopping work.
You just get busy elsewhere.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just busy elsewhere. Yeah, but it's about enjoying myself and enjoying being a carer and just sitting in that space. Whether I'll still be sitting in that nice, comfy space in 12 months' time, I don't know. And I'll be the first to admit that. But you know what? I will work my way through that journey. And in 12 months' time, I'll either, if my business has grown bigger than I wanted to, then I'll employ someone. I will go back to I'll keep reflecting and I will go back to counseling towards the end of this year and go, all right, do some reflection. Yes, I could sit there and do it myself and I have the skills to do that. But sometimes it helps to have someone challenge you.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to get an outside perspective. It's good to get an outside perspective. Now, last question for you, Monica. What would be a message? You probably come across lots of carers in your groups, and sometimes you feel like it's not your place to give them advice or whatnot. If there's one piece of advice that you might give to the people in caring roles out there, what do you think that might be?
I would say that you can't be everything. Don't try to be everything and seek support. Don't be ashamed in seeking support. You cannot do this alone. Support is absolutely the key and like-minded support. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have found that other carers have been a much better support than family because they don't get it. Like as I said, when I was critically ill, which my mother-in-law has only just realised in the last couple of months, I rang seeking family support and she said to me, oh, the cat hasn't quite settled in. And I'm going, the cat? What about your daughter-in-law who never asks for help, is ringing you and asking you for help? Does that not say something? And I just had that conversation with her in the last month or so. And she says, I had no idea. I says, if I'm asking for help, what does that say? She goes, but I couldn't have done what you do. I says, and that's all you needed to say. You didn't need to deflect and say that the cat needed you at home.
Mm-hmm.
So owning that and, Aaron's siblings, as much as they're all behind me, every one of them would say they can't do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Yeah, I don't hold that against them. Whereas other carers, you can say, yep, had a shitty day today, and they go, yep, get that. Because it's a very different sort of day than just having a normal shitty day as a carer. Because it's not necessarily about something that you've got control about. So you can have a shitty day that you've got control over and, your own destiny. But when it's somebody else not doing what needs to be done or them having a bad day, you have no control over that. All you can do is be there and, get them through it, no matter what that looks like. So it could be, yelling and screaming. It could be, interrupting the neighbours. It could be anything. Luckily, we live plenty of space away from the neighbours. But it could be anything, and you've got no control over that other than to go, all right, take a deep breath. Now it's going to be okay. Do you want a cup of tea? Or let's go for a walk? Because that's all you can do. Yeah, you could just have to go, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to step away and let it happen and then walk back in because you have no control. Whereas in your own life, you have control. You can decide that if you want to be shitty, you can't control someone else being shitty. But if you're caring for that person and they're shitty, you've got to do something about it. Otherwise, it could escalate and you could end up at the local police station or in the local hospital or you could end up anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So other carers get that because they've been in that position generally where they are completely helpless about what's going on. All I can do is just stick it out. And yeah, if you're not a carer, you don't get that.
Yeah, there's a certain sense of compassion. It feels like that comes from one carer to another, right? That's great. That's really that's really useful to get that perspective. Thank you, Monica, for taking the time. I really appreciate your insight and the wonderful work that you're doing. I'm looking forward to hearing your TED talk one day about about you raising a family as well as having a wonderful relationship with all the boys in your life.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, I can definitely see that. I know that time is of essence. So I wish you all the best for the future and everything that you plan to do, and I hope that our paths cross again.
Not a problem. I will talk to you very soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Australian Carers, a Kintsugi Heroes special series. Thank you to Colin Lilly for permission to use Broken as our theme music for this series. If you enjoyed this conversation, share the podcast with a friend and let us know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Kintsugi Heroes and the stories we share, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au and follow the instructions to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.